This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 235 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's topic is travel slip-ups, when things go wrong. People love hearing about when things go wrong, and it seems people love talking about it too, because I keep, even without meaning to, collecting stories about when things have gone wrong. So today's episode being travel slip-ups, they're not major things, but they're interesting stories nonetheless. And they focus on a few topics, things like timing and being late or early, luggage, often a problem, and injuries. Nothing too serious, but injuries nonetheless. So if I think about my own experiences, I'm pretty sure it was just last week or the one before that I spoke about being an hour late to meet some people in Germany because I had misunderstood or mistranslated perhaps the local dialect for 5:15, very confusing in southwest Germany in Swabian dialect. So I don't blame myself for that one. In terms of luggage, I also don't blame myself for the time my luggage went missing forever. Somewhere, maybe in Singapore, is one of my favourite ever backpacks. My large backpack that took me all around Europe and Asia in my 20s and early 30s, but it never arrived. It failed to make its connection from when we took a flight from Penang to Singapore, then Singapore back to Perth. My backpack never made it. It was very sad day. But at least I was coming home, so I came home to, a full wardrobe of clothes, etc. Could have been much worse. And the other topic today is about injuries and falls. And I'm sure many listeners will remember me confessing to having a fall off a bike in Copenhagen a couple of years back. And that was completely my fault because I had my phone out and I was trying to use Google Maps while cycling. And of course, it was a stupid thing to do. And I managed to hit a bump, or I can't quite remember how it happened, but I certainly remember ending up on the ground in Copenhagen with a couple of very sore knees, as it turned out. And a nice man did stop and check, was I okay? I was like, yes. My son was, I think, partway between giggling and also just embarrassed that his mother would do such a thing. And concern, of course. He was definitely concerned. But anyway, I spent the rest of our time in Copenhagen finding it quite difficult to go up and down the 4 flights of stairs to our Airbnb because those knees really hurt. So I learnt my lesson. I won't do it again. I promise I will not ride and look at my phone ever. I just won't. I promise. Anyway, let me get on to my guests today who all have their own tales of travel slip-ups. And my first one is Bob DiMenna, who, like me, is a punctual person, and he's an extremely organised person too. And that's probably good context for this story of what happened to him and his friends when they were travelling in Peru.
So we are traveling through Peru on our way to see Machu Picchu. It's myself, my good friend Elliot, who you actually met.
Yes.
And a third friend who I grew up with. I've known since 4th grade, my friend Brian. We're traveling through on our way to Machu Picchu, through the Sacred Valley, and we come to the town of Aguas Calientes. I don't know if you've been to Machu Picchu or if you're familiar with. No, so Aguas Calientes is Spanish for hot springs, and it is this beautiful little mountain town at the base of Machu Picchu, and it's surrounded by lush rainforest, and it has this beautiful flowing river that splits the town into two, and it's just this incredible little isolated jungle village that you have to spend time in before making your way up to the top of Machu Picchu. I mean, if you choose to get there this way, there are multiple ways to get to Machu Picchu. But if anyone's listening to this and has been to Machu Picchu, I'm sure they know immediately the city that I'm talking about.
Right.
So I think it started out as a farm village, but kind of changed over the years, and now I think it thrives off of tourism completely. That's pretty much its bread and butter. It's means for existence these days. But so we get there really late in the evening, and we decide to just grab food and go to bed. So we're staying in a hostel, and it's a smaller hostel. Our room is pretty small. It has 3 beds and a single bathroom for 3 guys, which not a big deal. We took turns getting showers or whatever and got ready for bed. Our windows were actually abutted the hallway, which I thought was weird. So our view was, if you opened it, you just saw other doors. But we had 3 big, beautiful windows in our room. It was a very odd.
None of them face the outside.
No, they face the hallway. They face other rooms in the hallway.
Okay, and that is weird.
yeah, really odd. So we get ready, we eat, we go to bed, and we go to bed by 8 p.m. And our goal was actually to wake up at 4 a.m. so we can wake up, get ready, and start hiking up to Machu Picchu as early as possible to kind of beat the crowds, beat the buses up there.
Right.
So we go to bed at 8 p.m. to wake up. And throughout the night, you can hear people in the hostel moving around and speaking. And it's a noisy place to be. I don't know. The hostels are just noisy in general. They always have a younger group that stays up late and drinks and parties. And so we ended up having to deal with that. And eventually, at some point, I woke up and the room was bright. And I frantically jump out of bed and realize that we are late for Machu Picchu. The reason we came to Peru to begin with, our tickets only get us in at a certain slot. We're going to be late for Machu Picchu. I jump up, I scream, I start yelling at the other 2 guys. They jump up in a daze, start putting their pants on, getting ready. Everybody's just frantic. I'm upset. And then Elliot, being the smart guy that he is, looked at his watch, and it said 11 p.m.
Oh, no.
The lights that I saw were actually coming in from the hallway, not from the outside. My heart kind of just sank, and I sat there, and I just realized that I was completely wrong.
You're 5 hours early for your 4 a.m. wake up.
Oh, man.
Oh, no,
but that was our
feeling.
Yeah, and they all just looked at me, Bob, you have to relax a little bit, take it easy. It was only 11 p.m. We barely were asleep, and it was just such a frantic time. Yeah, so we ended up not missing Machu Picchu, which was so great. And we went to sleep, and we woke up at 5 a.m. as planned. I guess, I don't know, stressed. There's a lot of stress that goes in. So I planned the entire trip. And so there's a lot of stress in making sure it ran smoothly, and a mixture of the tossing and turning with the sound and then the lights. I mean, our room was bright. Someone must have turned on the lights in the hallway. And it was like the sun came up. It was like I had that internal alarm clock, and I thought it was time to go. And my heart just sank. Because I thought I was never going to see Machu Picchu. I came this far. I came to the town that sits at the base of Machu Picchu, and I thought I was not going to see it because they wouldn't let me in for being so late in the day.
Oh my god!
And,
I feel you. I can feel that exact feeling. It's a horrible feeling, and I'm so glad it turned out to be not the case.
It was a relief. One of the biggest reliefs I think I've ever felt, knowing that it was going to work out. Poor Elliot and Brian, though, I woke them up frantically in the middle of their nice sleep. And we were exhausted. We were beat from walking around. We explored parts of the Sacred Valley all day that morning. And so we were just so depleted of energy. And we finally crashed. And then 3 hours later, I woke them up screaming, like, we got to go. Get ready. And we joked about it for a while, but they've moved on.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I had a similar experience, not quite as frantic, but I know that feeling. When I was in Iceland, we were there in summer, and so it's when they have 24-hour sunlight, but it's still, it's mostly cloudy and fairly grey and fairly dull most of the time. And I remember very vividly and we're staying in little cottages and Airbnbs that none of them, I kind of assumed if you have 24-hour sunlight, they'll have really good block-out blinds and curtains. No, not the case. So, it was always a bit light. But I always remember one day I woke up and same thing, the sun was streaming in so brightly, and I knew we had to get up and check out of this place. I was like, oh my God, it's morning. Oh, well, it's time to get up. I checked my watch. It was 2 a.m. But it was because the sun had come down a bit, and so it was kind of under the clouds and streaming right in, so it felt really bright, but it was totally the middle of the night. But that feeling of, oh, it's morning, oh my goodness, you know. And then I did check my watch, and I was like, what? It's 2 o'clock in the morning, or it was even 1 or something. It was crazy time. It was nowhere near time to get up. And by the time it was time to get up, it was grayer again. So such a weird feeling. But
I mean, those few minutes of thinking it was the daytime. I mean, to even think that we would sleep in that late is kind of crazy in itself. I mean, we were up early every day, and we went to bed so early. I mean, I doubt it's not. I mean, it's not like we were drinking or anything. We were completely sober. We were going to get a good night's sleep, and so
the chances of all three of you sleeping late, like much too late, that it was so bright.
Yeah. I'll never forget. Like, I mean, my friend Brian, who he just woke up and went with the flow without even thinking of it. Just, I guess maybe he was still in a daze, and I just remember him like putting on his jeans, at the edge of the bed, not even second guessing. Yeah, just doing what he's told. And then it was Elliot who was like, let me just double check this. And then we all look at the windows that has this, the light streaming in, and realize that it was just the hallway.
It's not sunlight.
No.
Oh, what a funny situation.
Poor Bob and his friends. No fun to be up at 11 p.m. when you actually could be sleeping for another 5 hours. Anyway, my next story of a travel slip-up, it comes from Kayla, who you will hear from more in a future episode, because since this outing in her high school days, she's actually become a mural painter, which will become relevant as you hear this story.
My stepfather is a manager and at a radio station and a big-time broadcasting radio person in our small town. So he would, through the radio station, they would have cruises that they'd hold every other year. So he and my mom and my sister and I went with this cruise group, and we did a cruise in the Caribbean. So we took a bus down and then, until we got to Florida, and then went on our little cruise. And so anyway, at some point, because you have to drop off your luggage with whatever courier, and they'll bring it to the boat, and it'll be in your room when you get there. And so at some point, my suitcase was dropped in the ocean and completely submerged.
Oh no!
So when I came came into the room, I noticed that it was all soaked. Well, what made it even worse is I believe I was a freshman in high school at the time, and I was just starting to take art seriously, or more seriously. I loved, I was always creative as a kid and loved to do arts and craftsy things, but my high school art teacher was more serious, and it started to become like a thing that I could actually make a career of. So I had packed my sketchbook in my suitcase, and because I thought that I could sketch on my travels, and so I opened the suitcase, and of course the pages are soaked and it's ruined, and I'm devastated because there's my drawings as a young artist, just hours that I had spent on them. So I was just so upset, but thankfully there was really only a handful of drawings in there, and at the time, I was so upset, but now I can kind of look back and laugh at it. Because there was a kind of a headstrong, really nice lady. Her name was Carol, and my mom and stepdad had told her the situation, and she went and talked to people on the cruise, and had to kind of complain and say, oh my gosh, this poor girl, she lost her, this young artist lost her drawings. And so they sent us all this room service, and we got chocolate covered strawberries and all these things. And then they have like an art auction on the boat too. So they gave me all these nice fine art prints, and they're all very accommodating, but I'll never forget that my suitcase was dropped in the ocean and I lost my sketchbook, and how upset I was because I was at that point as a young artist. So.
I don't blame you. I feel for younger Kayla still now. It must have been awful. No. I never even heard that was a thing, that they might actually sometimes drop luggage into the sea. That's terrible. Do you know if it happens often, or were you exceedingly unlucky?
I'm not sure. Everyone else's was fine. It was just my suitcase, so hopefully not very often.
I was very intrigued by this story of Kayla's luggage going overboard, so I did ask in the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group if anyone else had had such an experience with a cruise ship. And it turned out we heard from a couple of people who had bags being dipped in the water, usually transferring from very small boats, the kind where they just, throw them from the boat to the shore or to the wharf. Nothing quite like a big cruise ship dropping a suitcase over. And actually, funnily enough, it seemed to be that it was much more likely that people would be falling in the water than luggage. We had quite a few funny tales of people who had missed steps or been leaning over too far. Fortunately, all funny tales where there was no harm done, but it was, more likely that people than luggage would be harmed, as it turned out. So it gave me a giggle. All right, my final guest today is Patti, who, while being on a study abroad program in Ireland, which we heard about a couple of episodes back, she took a trip to the beautiful Aran Islands off the west coast of Ireland.
So on the Aran Islands, of course, the thing to do is you do a bicycle tour of the Aran Islands. And so my cousin and I and a couple other people, we got on our bikes and we started biking around. And Aran Island is just fascinating because it's rock. And so the farmers, of course, had built up these, not very stable looking rock, walls everywhere, and so we basically rode from one side of the island to the other, and we were on the west coast of the island, and we went down to the shoreline, and it was really rough terrain, and it was a lot of tidal pools and sharp rocks, and the tide was out as we got there, and so we were walking. I'm from Minnesota. You very rarely get to the ocean. And so he grew up in Colorado and in New Mexico. So, this was also an experience for him. And so we went out onto these tidal pools and we're looking at the small little shrimps and, crabs and everything and just in the little fish, stuck in these tidal pools, and started noticing that the waves were getting kind of bigger and bigger.
Uh-oh.
And I was just like, and we were pretty far out. And so slowly started walking back to shore, and the waves started, hitting the calves, of our legs. And my cousin takes a look around, and the look on his face was just pure terror.
Oh, no.
I turn around and I see this huge wave coming towards me. And I'm like, hello, Greenland. This is not going to end up well.
Oh, no.
And, a stupid land,
that's
locked
right.
people just do not understand tides and how they work.
Oh, no.
And so I start booking. I start running for the shore. And right before the wave hit me, I fell, landed on one of the rocks on my knees, and had to deal with being completely drenched. And but I wasn't pulled out to sea, thank God.
Yeah,
so,
thank God for that.
Yeah, but I stood up and realized that there was now a hole in my knee, right next to my kneecap.
Oh.
And there was nobody around. I had to get back on my bicycle.
Oh,
I was wearing
ouch.
white socks with my white tennis shoes.
Oh, no.
Everything was covered in blood. By the time I got back to the hostel that we were staying at, there was an American rugby player. Sounds strange, but I swear to God, it's the truth. He was an American. He played rugby. And he took one look at my knee and he's like, I can see the bone. I think you need to go to the hospital.
Oh, no.
So ended up getting a taxi, taking me to the hospital. And the small little clinic, it wasn't a hospital, it was a clinic.
I was wondering, yeah.
And as soon as I get there, the doctor and the nurse rush out of the clinic. Turns out that some other tourists had a little bit too much to drink and were riding their bicycles and didn't stop in front of one of these wobbly stone walls.
Yeah.
That was on the bottom, the very base of a hill that they had ridden down. And both of them flipped it, and one of them had to be airlifted off of the island. It was in such, he had a major head injury.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting in the waiting room waiting for all of this to be
dealt
finished.
with. Oh, no.
And by the time I come back, things had started to congeal and things like this. And and it was a really bad spot. And they're like, we can't really give you stitches at this point in time because they will simply pop open.
Oh, gosh.
And so they gave me like the tape stitches. And of course, that not even those held. And so I have a nice big, it's about the size of, probably an Australian dollar, actually.
Right.
On my knee.
Oh, no.
And
a souvenir from the Aran Islands.
Yeah, my souvenir from the Aran Islands. And it was funny because, my maiden name is Coughlin, which is a very common Irish name.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're like, oh, you have ancestors that came from here. I'm like, yep, from the County Cork area. And they're like, great. Well, just for our records, we need to know, your home address and, where you live. And I said, okay. And I gave him my address, which was Shamrock Drive. And both the doctor and the nurse, lovely women, but they just burst out laughing. And they're like, seriously? I'm like,
you're making this up.
Joking.
Oh, no way.
You're a Coughlin that lives on Shamrock Drive. I'm like, yes, I am.
That is so cute. Oh, no.
So that was my Aran Island experience.
Oh, I love it. I had a lovely Aran Islands experience, but without any injuries, thank goodness. So,
congratulations.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Oh, goodness. Poor Patti. I'm glad that she survived this Aran Islands issue. And I meant to find out how her knee is these days. Hopefully no long-term damage. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to episode 235 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. And a extra big thank you to my guests who've happily confessed these various slip-ups and crazy things that have happened to them on their travels. I appreciate hearing your stories, even though they're not the best things that have happened on your trips. So big thanks to Bob DiMenna. He's from the Traveller's Blueprint podcast, so you can find them on any podcast app or at thetravelersblueprint.com. Thanks also to Kayla Ridley from Kayski Creations, and you can find her work at kayskicreations.com, and putting together an episode about her work as a mural artist, and it's going to be really good. It's really interesting to hear about it, so you'll listen out for that down the track. And finally, a huge thanks to Patti Buff. So fun to chat with her, and she's a writer. You can find out more about Patti's work at pattibuff.wordpress.com. Don't forget to join us for more laughs and more interesting chats in the Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook, or find a link at the show notes. And for this episode, you can find the show notes at notaballerina.com/235. As always, thanks so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.